Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So last Sunday I did my first ever triathlon and it was a sprint triathlon, and in this video I'm going to take you through everything that went wrong and a few things that went right. Alright, let's jump straight in. So first up, two massive thank yous. The first one is to my coach, Coach Costa from the NRC-Team. He's been leading me through the training, and without him I would definitely not be in the shape that I currently am in. Secondly, I would like to thank everyone at Triathlon Sudbury. They put on an absolute banging event, and big thanks especially to all the volunteers who gave up their Sunday morning and allowed us all to race. So most of you who already follow the channel probably know that my main goals for the year are a middle distance or half Ironman triathlon, so that is coming up in August. But before that I have some smaller warm-up events. The first of those was a sprint triathlon. A sprint triathlon is 400 meters of swimming, 20-kilometer bike ride, and then a 5-kilometer run. So it's not too long, but given that it's my first ever triathlon, I still needed to treat it with some level of respect. How about some goal times? So I wanted to do the swim, 400-meter swim, in about 10 minutes. That's a pace of 2 minutes and 30 seconds per 100 meter. Not particularly fast, I know, but I am not a very good swimmer at all. For the bike, I wanted to do the 20-kilometer course in 40 minutes, giving me a speed of 30 kilometers an hour. And finally, the run, 5 kilometers, I wanted to do this in about 25 minutes with a pace of 5 minutes per kilometer. Adding in about 5 minutes for transitions, this would give me a total event time of 1 hour and 20 minutes. These goals were pretty lofty for me, and I felt like if everything went right on race day, then maybe I would just about be able to get them. However, there was one thing I didn't take into account. I assumed the bike course would be 20 kilometers long, but it was actually 22.5 kilometers long. That means obviously it will take a little bit longer to complete. My original target time of 40 minutes was based on a speed of 30 kilometers an hour. So even though it's a bit longer, I'm just going to keep that goal speed and adjust it, giving me a new target time of 45 minutes for the bike portion. Now with that small adjustment, the whole event I would like to finish in 1 hour and 25 minutes. Right, on to race day. I was up at 5 AM with the event starting at 8 AM. The main reason for being up so early is that I wanted to have a proper breakfast and allow it some time to pass through me before leaving home. The previous night I had already loaded the bike onto the car, so there wasn't that much to do in the morning. All I had to do was eat breakfast and drive to the event. The registration opened at 6:30 and then the transition closed at 7:40. That gave me about an hour to set up my area, and to be honest, I didn't need nearly that long, but with it being my first ever event, I just wanted to make sure I had enough time to sort myself out. Anyway, once I'd arrived, I realized I had already made one mistake. So on my bike, I had planned to mount my camera, and I put my camera in my bag, but I left the screw to mount the camera onto the bike on the bike itself. And during the drive from my house to the event, this screw must have worked its way out. Maybe there were so many vibrations on the car mount or something. But anyway, when I arrived, there was no longer a screw in the camera mount, which was a bit annoying. So that means for the bike portion of this, there is no footage at all, which is a bit of a shame. But like I said, this is an event for me to work out all these little kinks. So by the time we get to the main event in the summer, hopefully all these things should have been worked out. So I got everything set up in the transition area, but there was one thing that I'd only actually considered the night before. In my previous events, I would normally just attach my race number to my t-shirt or to my jersey, but with this being a triathlon, all I was wearing was a tri-suit, so I couldn't really attach the number to the tri-suit. So instead what I did is I got my running belt and I attached my number to that. That's quite good because for the run, they want the number to be on your front, but for the bike, they want it to be on your back. So that's really easy to just spin around. So they do sell proper triathlon belts for attaching your number to, but I just attached it to my running belt using some safety pins, which is a lot easier and probably quite a bit cheaper. A triathlon belt is just another annoying thing that I need to buy, which I didn't really fancy doing the night before. So the race started in an outdoor pool, which obviously can only fit a certain number of people. So for that reason, the race had a staggered start. The first people went off at 8 o'clock, and it was ordered such that the fastest people would go last and the slowest swimmers would go first. That worked out quite well for me because I was in the 4th wave of starters, which meant I got to start at about 8:06, whereas loads of other people had to wait until after 9. So onto the race itself. The swim was largely uneventful. I'd set myself a time of 10 minutes and I managed to do my swim pretty peacefully. I didn't go out too hard. Swimming is definitely my weakest of the 3 sports. So my goal for the swim was 10 minutes and I managed to finish in 9 minutes and 45 seconds, which was a pretty solid start. Next up was transition 1. This is the transition from the swim to the bike. So in training, I had done a few practices of transitioning from the bike to the run, but never from the swim to the bike. So this was very new to me. I had arranged all my stuff in the transition area in the order I needed it. So I put on my helmet first and then my sunglasses, and then got to drying my feet and putting on my socks and my shoes. I also had to put on my running belt, which had my number on it. Overall, I felt like this transition took ages, and it did. It was about 3 minutes to get through this, which is a lot of time. There's definitely loads of opportunity here where I can shave some time off in the future events. So out of T1 and onto the bike course. So I'd set myself a goal of averaging 30 kilometers an hour, which I figured would be quite difficult given that there were some small rises on the course and that it was a particularly windy day. Also, my bike is not particularly aero, it's just a regular road bike, and I'm not a particularly aero person. So the bike went quite smoothly. I do wish I had the camera on the front to show you some of this, but unfortunately I'll have to save that for next time. There was one major problem that almost stopped me. The road we were on was not particularly smooth. It's very similar to most roads in the UK with lots of little stones and lots of potholes. So at some point I did hit a stone and I heard the horrible sound of air shooting out my back tyre. But luckily I am running tubeless, so after a few seconds it just sort of stopped and the tubeless sealant had done its job. So after the race I looked at my tyres and they were in a horrible state. Obviously not all of this has been caused by the race, it was just an accumulation of all the miles I've done on the terrible English roads, but my tyres are so cut up, it's definitely time for a new set. So given that the race was staggered and generally the faster people were starting behind the slower ones, I thought I would have so many people overtaking me, especially having looked at everyone's bikes in the transition area. There were some really fancy ones and by extension I figured some really fast people. However, during the whole race only one person overtook me on the bike leg, and actually only one person overtook me overall. And to be honest, I was pretty happy with that. It proved that I must have been going at a solid speed on the bike to hold off all these faster people behind me. So 44 minutes later, I crossed over into T2. My final bike time was 44 minutes with an average speed of 30.2 kilometers an hour. I was definitely pushing quite hard, but at no point did I feel like it was unsustainable or I was going into the red. Overall, I averaged 230 watts and 250 watts normalized. So my second transition was a lot smoother than the first one. There's a lot less to do in this one as well. All you need to do is take your helmet off, take your shoes off and put your running shoes on. So that didn't take too long. So what did take ages was me doing up my shoelaces. Obviously you're quite exhausted at that point and the finicky act of doing up shoelaces is actually quite difficult when you're breathing heavy. Before the race I did actually buy some speedy shoelaces which are really easy to do up, but I hadn't ran in them before the race. So I figured I'd better leave that until after the race before trying them rather than trying something new on race day, which they always say is a bad idea. So coming into the run, the worry is always that you've gone too hard on the bike and that you're going to have nothing left in your legs. However, to my surprise, I actually felt quite good. I had set myself a goal time of 25 minutes for the 5k, which would have been a pace of 5 minutes per kilometer. So for the first 2k's, I was averaging a pretty solid pace, faster than I needed in fact. But after that came the really hard bits of the course. There was a pretty steep hill and during that bit I just wanted to walk, but I managed to make myself jog to the top even though it was really hard. However, what goes up must come down, and on the downhill part I really couldn't even go that much faster. And that's because it was through a forest and there were loads of tree roots and rocks and it just wasn't the right conditions to really go fast. You had to be really careful to avoid falling over. But after that, the end was in sight and I pushed myself to the finishing line. I knew it would be agonizingly close as to whether I achieved 25 minutes. In the end, I crossed the line in a time of 1 hour, 24 minutes and 5 seconds, with the 5k time being just under 25 minutes. Overall, I was pretty ecstatic with that time. I had managed to hit my goals in all 3 legs. When I set those goals, I figured they would probably be a bit too hard and I'd fall short on some of them, but I was really happy to have achieved all of them. What surprised me most was how different the race was to training. During training, most of my runs and cycles had been at a really easy pace, with just a few short, intense workouts. At some points, I did doubt whether this was the right way to go, but the results on race day definitely showed that taking it easy during training and only doing a few intense sessions really does pay off. The best thing about this was even though I went quite fast on race day and did achieve all my goals, I didn't even feel particularly exhausted afterwards. Even though obviously there was some fatigue, during the rest of the day I didn't feel bad. Obviously there's always going to be some fatigue, but compared to my previous events, it wasn't anywhere near as bad. I feel like all these hours of Zone 2 easy training have made my body a lot more resilient, and I'm able to recover so much quicker. If I were left to my own devices, I would definitely have trained way too hard and with far too much intensity, and probably just have burned myself out. So if anyone is questioning the value of getting a coach, I would definitely recommend it. Another thing that Coach Costa allowed for is a proper taper. We built up the volume over time, and then the week before the event we really backed off. I was really surprised at how much we backed off, in fact. If I was left to my own devices, again, I probably wouldn't have backed off enough and would not have felt so fresh. To be completely honest with you, I don't think I've ever felt that fresh coming into an event. I was really shocked at how good I felt. So on the bike portion, Coach Costa suggested a wattage of 200 to try and stick to, but on the day, most of the time I wasn't looking at the computer, I was just riding what felt like a comfortable wattage. But when I did look down, I was really surprised most of the time to see that I was doing like 240 to 250 watts. It was quite a windy day too, so I spent most of my time trying to get really low and aero. I feel like if it was a flatter course and a calmer day, there was definitely a lot more time for me to have gained. So where do we go from here? Obviously, this is the first of my trio of summer triathlons. July 14th is the next one. That is a standard distance triathlon with 1500 meters of swimming, a 40k bike ride, and then a 10k run. The biggest step up here is the swim, going from a 400 meter pool swim to a 1500 meter open water swim is definitely a big change. So for the next month, I'll probably be focusing on my open water swimming. I feel like the distance is okay for me. I've done that sort of distance a lot in training before, but I've never done it in open water, so that's the thing I need to focus on. Luckily for me, the lake where the event is an open water swimming place, so I can go there and practice in the same lake where the event will be taking place. So hopefully on race day, that won't be much of a shock at all. So after that, on August 6th is the main one, the big event, the half Ironman. So hopefully come August, I will have upped my game and I'll be able to finish that event and call myself a half Ironman finisher. All right, that's it from me. If you liked the video, please hit the thumbs up button and like it, and be sure to subscribe if you want to see more. All right, I will see you in the next one. Peace out.